Hey everyone, welcome back to the Pain in Your Assets podcast with Stella Bee on air. Still here recording live at the Indiana Black Expo in Indianapolis. We are on season 2, episode 3, still talking about the topic of why did or didn't I get married. This is a hot topic, of course. And for those of you who are familiar with Let's Whitfield, he is the creator of the Dear Future Wifey podcast. He had a self-love soiree a while back and had a panel discussion on peace. One of the questions he asked is, why is peace so important? And one of the panel guests was Christian Keys, and his response to that question was, it's okay to be by yourself, and now that I'm okay being by myself, I'm not going to be in a situation that disturbs my peace or poisons my peace. I don't care how great the loving is, I don't care how beautiful somebody is or what their measurements are or their net worth or status. I added that in there. I'd rather keep my peace and sleep on the whole bed, sleep diagonal if I need to. I've spent enough years not having it, so now that I'm aware of what it is, what it tastes like and what it feels like, I'm not living without that. I don't need to be right all the time. I'm not, like 1 out of 2. But peace is priceless. The reason is you've got to save a little bit of energy for yourself, and that energy is that peace. The ability to just sit somewhere and just be like, quote unquote. And that was from Mr. Christian Keys. And those actually sound like my words so much that I could not have said it any better myself. Protect your peace at all costs. And so, speaking of peace, one question that I have seen a lot is this question of prenup in terms of marriage. And so I would ask, is a prenup part of the peace aspect of preparing for marriage? Especially if, like, the parties who, if you've read another one of Devon Franklin's books, which is The Hollywood Commandments, a spiritual guide to secular success, and now you may or may not, or in the future, possess substantial assets. And so is a prenup part of protecting not only your peace, but protecting your assets? Going back to, we mentioned Sherry Shepherd was one of the former wives who practiced the wait. She also, now being a new talk show host, mentioned that she had prenups and that she lost money with her first marriage, not having one, and that she also lost money with her second marriage and subsequent divorce with one. So my question is a prenup part of the peace? But she went on to say, just as you don't expect to have your house or car or whatever else, something happened to it, you still have insurance just in case. And so it's not saying that you're anticipating divorce. It's not a bad thing to go ahead and have it. And so that's basically what she was saying. And my take on a prenup for individuals who are considering marriage, me personally, I would get one. I'm currently not rich in my bank account. However, I would get one if I was to marry someone that was rich and he wanted to get a prenup. That's fine with me. You know, I used to think in terms of prenup. I used to think that the person that's asking for it is asking for a prenup because they don't trust themselves. I used to think that. I used to think that, you know, they anticipate that they might cheat or they might do something to compromise the relationship, and they may have sometimes you can have individuals who, you know, like I mentioned in previous episodes, infidelity is not the number one reason why couples divorce. And so it may be present. You may have couples who have experienced infidelity in their marriage, but that was not enough for the marriage to actually dissolve. It's not always financial either. There are other situations where it's the breakdown of communication, usually other deep-rooted foundational things that inevitably cause a marriage to dissolve. Usually things that were there, present, but were overlooked or discounted, resurfaced themselves, and that may have been the actual inevitable dissolution of the marriage, but not necessarily infidelity. Because when you get married, you don't get married to get divorced. And so even though it's easier for women to forgive than men, that's not always the deciding factor of what would constitute someone saying, I just can't forgive this person or move on. And so I used to think that a person that the one who asked for the prenup was the one who kind of didn't trust themselves. They thought that they may not be able to forego all of their options at some point. That they felt like, I might get tired of you. You may get fat or ugly or whatever reason. I may not be attracted to you at some point, and might dip out instead of just going through the divorce process first. You know, I just kind of felt like they almost subconsciously anticipated that something might happen. But actually, I don't think that now that they anticipate that, because I don't believe people get married with the intent to cheat. I don't believe that people get married with the intent for things not to last. It's over time, the person that you felt like you just could not live without, if that was the case, the trust may have, and you can lose trust in someone for more than infidelity also. It could be other things that surface from the foundation, as I mentioned. It could be things that surface from your childhood, their childhood, because everyone's not raised the same. Some generational curses, you know, those things that we tackle as well. A variety of things that could surface that could allow a breakdown of trust in the relationship. And when the trust is not there, that has an impact on the communication, and the communication breakdown has an impact on intimacy, and intimacy breakdown has an impact on your connection with your person. And when you lose that connection, it's so easy for someone else to step in, and they just appear to be like, oh, this is what I've been missing. And sometimes it could be timing. You know, an individual could be going through something in their relationship. Women, they say in their 40s, that's when their hormones spike. And so there could be premenopausal, and certain things that they may be less tolerant of at home that were already there anyway, but they were kind of more tolerant of it, overlooked a lot of things as they were in their early child rearing stages, and now being less tolerant in those hormonal fluctuations of premenopause are basically letting their spouse have it. And they're also hormonal because their sex drive has spiked. And so as a woman's sex drive spikes, a man's may decrease, unless he's on one of them red or blue pills. And so that can impact that midlife crisis situation also. And so you really have to be connected within that window time frame, because you'll be thinking that this new person that came in is the pot of gold, when, especially if the other person that comes in is opposite of what you have at home. So you're a wife and a mother, and the other person may be single. They may have a child or children, but the child or children does not live with that person. So they have more free time to give you that impromptu spontaneity that you're a person that you live with and is in the trenches of raising a family and keeping the roof over the household going, may not have the freedom to do. I mean, you can still schedule to incorporate that, at least keep those date nights going, keep the bedroom spicy, whatever it may be. But the other person has more free time, may have more experience, or something that you don't have at home, whatever it is, that they're giving you something different. Those kind of things. When things get a little dull at home, you have someone else that brings you something different. It may not be always better. Sometimes it is, but it could just be different. And because you're in a routine at home, you're thinking that, oh, this is what I've been missing, when really it could just be a time to reconnect. We went through the COVID pandemic, and that really was a time where a lot of marriages were tested. It was either win or lose. And it could have been a time where even some marriages that were experiencing infidelity could have been repaired, and I'm sure some of them may have been, because they didn't have access, they weren't in a position to be with the person that they were seeing, because we were all quarantined. So you with your person now, your real person, your spouse. You can't get out of the house and get to your meeting, your gym session with your person. you gotta stay at home now. And so you could either patch things up, let's talk this out, let's figure out where we disconnected and reconnect, and use this as an opportunity. Like, thank you, Lord, you blessing us with this time to get somewhere and sit down and really assess what's really going on at home. And I believe some actually did that. And then there may have been others who they just, it may not have even been as bad as the one who was actually going through infidelity, but now, since they were at home with their person, realized that I cannot stand being with this person this long, this amount of days. That's why I tell myself and other individuals, if you really want to know if you can marry someone, for the ones who have not moved in, as we used to call that in the church, shacking up, if you're not living with your person, go on a vacation, like a 7-day cruise where you cannot you have to sleep with that person, be with them the full time. Go on extended ones, because just being with them for a couple hours and going home is not the same as actually being with someone all day, every day, several days. And that's what the COVID pandemic did. It kind of revealed that some people were more disconnected than they thought they were. They thought that because they were in cruise control for so long, just, okay, we get up, go to work, go home, prepare dinner, put the kids to bed, get up the next day and do the whole thing all over again. And somewhere, maybe once a week, we might connect and go ahead and have some real bland, boring sex. and then, just keep things moving. But because the pandemic forced us all to get somewhere and sit down and reassess where we really were with our relationships, for those who were married during that time, some people didn't survive because they realized that they had disconnected just that much. Like there was really no connection there other than that conveyor belt, just really in a routine of things. And they could have also taken a step back and say, we need to throw everything in this box, shake it up, and let's try to reconfigure this. Some probably did, some probably just couldn't make it through. And so in terms of protecting your peace, it's a matter of deciding if what you have is worth fighting for. Is it really what you want? It may have been what you wanted back then, but it may not be what you want now. We are allowed to change our minds. And sometimes you just take a real good look and realize that you were just in a culture shock. You know, there's plenty of books on marriage and relationships and even parenting, but once you actually experience it, it's its own different animal. It is just like every person is different, every child is different, every situation is different. It's what you make it, but it is different, and there is no one case fits all situation. We want that to be the case, but it isn't. And as you get older, you become more covetous of your peace. you really do. I know me now. I am very less tolerant of anything that goes against my peace, whether it's in real life, on social media, and I, do my best to be kind, as they say, be kind. I know I could be petty, sarcastic, witty. That's just part of me being a Capricorn woman. But at my core, I am kind. I am merciful. I believe in being, giving everyone the benefit of the doubt. And because being that Christian woman of being forgiving, because I know that I've been forgiven, I don't judge because I know that I have not always not sinned. And so I do practice that part of the kindness, but at the same time, if it's something that's gonna disrupt my peace, I'll turn that TV off. I'll unfollow that person on social media, block them if I need to, and encourage others to do the same for me. If I say or do something that may offend, I apologize. That was not my intent. However, it goes both ways. You are free to unfollow me as well versus coming for me, because I can be petty. All love though. It's all love. And so still talking on the topic of why did or did not get married in season 2 of the Pain in Your Assets podcast, because that pain can be in your pockets, it can be in your heart, it can be in your soul. And so prenup is part of the pockets part of things. And there was another Man versus Male series by Dondre Whitfield. I think he may have had Will Smith, Kevin Hart, and a few others. They commented on there, and he speaks on the different side between a male and a man. And how it isn't always defined. He has a book on this topic, and here's a few quotes from the promo that he published on blacklove.com. I think he's speaking to Will Smith. Were there ever anything that stunted your matriculation into manhood? And Will Smith responded, I've known you for a long time, and you've never said matriculation to me. Don't you just love it with celebs use their humor to avoid a question? And so, of course, Dondre responded, this is like a webinar on manhood. Michael J. Jaw White responded, in a male-dominated society, the stuff I got away with was nuts. Devon Franklin responded to the same question, were there ever anything that stunted your matriculation into manhood? Devon Franklin responded, every man has to make the decision what type of man they want to be on that day. You really do have to make a decision, and it's the same for women. You have to make a decision what kind of woman you're going to be, what kind of wife you're going to be if you decide to get married, what kind of mother you're going to be if you decide to become a mom, because they're not all the same. There's some women who, even after becoming a mom, have decided that I'm not going to let my career suffer because of this. So I'm going to have to get and if you're blessed to get a nanny and a chef and so forth, and still, because you still want to put those hours in, if that's what you decided upon, God bless you. I couldn't afford that, but even then, I really wanted to be there for my kids. I have an MBA in accounting versus a CPA, even though I did take the test. I think I took the last written CPA exam before they went into the I took the last CPA exam, the written one, before they transitioned to the computerized version. I think that was the only time I took it. It was like over 2.5 days. It was graded on a sliding scale. I think you had to get like 75 to pass. I got like a 70 in all 4 areas. I was too offended. Like, seriously, this was graded on a sliding scale. Somebody could have gave me those extra 5 points. I was so disgusted. I didn't even retake it. And I think after that, they switched to where you could take each part separately. We had to take all 4 parts at the same time over 2.5 days, like exhausted or not. So I probably could have broken it down and just tackled one section at a time, but I figured, hey, I'm in nonprofit accounting now. It may not be absolutely necessary to have to be promoted and excelled in my field. And I think once I got to that point, I was already doing other stuff outside of work anyway. Had enough experience to still write this book, but then realized that I wanted to divide my time and maybe not go to the CFO level where I would have less time to focus on some of the other things, like this podcast I'm doing right now, for instance. And so getting back to how you decide on what kind of woman you want to be, what kind of mother you want to be, what kind of wife you want to be, I still wanted to participate in my kids' lives. It was rough, but nonprofit accounting allowed me to have that work-life balance more so than what I would have had probably as a CPA and working for an audit firm where I had to travel, or any kind of job where I had to travel and be away from home for several days. As I mentioned in my previous episodes, I had 4 babies still not fully potty trained. I couldn't afford to be away from the house. I had to be at home. Even the time when I was at work, I really couldn't afford to be away from the house. So I knew I couldn't afford to be away traveling for an extended period of time. And so once I accepted that and realized, okay, I'm a working mom, and also being a person who was in the arts, because when I got engaged and got married, I was already singing. I started doing theater in church when I was a teenager, so I was already in the arts. Having become a wife and a mother didn't stop that. I still sang for a while, and then after the kids got of age, they started doing theater. They started doing acting and singing and dance. And so I would go to their things as they, grew until I got back into it myself. And so being in an industry that allowed more of a work-life balance and not having to travel and be away, yes, it impacted my bank account. It did, but I wouldn't trade that. I thoroughly enjoy being able to be there for my kids and to be a mom. And sometimes I wish I could give more. I would actually be envious sometimes when the kids would have field trips and I couldn't go on it. And you see the other moms who, work part-time or didn't work at all and were able to be chaperones on the trips. And I'm like, I gotta go to work. I can't go. But I really want to go to the museum today, but I can't. It is what it is. I appreciate the time I've shared with them, and hopefully as they get older and start having their own families, they'll appreciate the time I sacrificed for them and remember on and reminisce on those days when they get their own families. And so getting back to the topic of male versus man, yes, you decide on what kind of man you want to be. You decide on what kind of husband you want to be. You decide on what kind of father you want to be. Yes, there's the notion of the deadbeat dad. And that particular term is speculative as well, because you can be a father who's is involved financially. You pay all your child support if you have that, or you just may not have been made to pay child support via the court, but you still support financially. Or you could be that dad who's always there. And there are actually dads out here who have custody as well, because I survived a 20-year marriage, but there were times well before that, like at least halfway through that road, where we had that discussion and decided to just stay together, for the kids or whatever it was, and just kind of hopefully things would get improved or coast through. But I also decided that I don't care how much child support I could or couldn't get. I know he wasn't rich, so I would not have gotten a whole lot. But even if I did go that route, it would not have been the same as having someone home to be there to just be home, so I can go to Super Walmart if I needed to. And so when you don't have custody of your child, it's not the same as paying. It's not. You still have the freedom to date however you want to date, whoever you want to date. They can come over to your place whenever they want to. You can go to theirs. It's not the same. You don't have to make arrangements for child care. If you have joint custody and you are living in the same state, because sometimes the dad may move out of state for work purposes. So if that's the case, he may have his child during the summer, but other than that, he has another 9 months of freedom, unless he has the child come in on like spring break. But more than likely, he's not going to have them fly in every weekend like someone who lives in this. Even if you don't have custody, but you live in the same state, you might have every other weekend. That's still more of a commitment than a person who does not live in the same state. The summer months, those weeks together may add up over time, but you can kind of plan that out where, okay, we may not be doing a whole lot of dating during this summer. We'll wait till the next 9 months to get it in. So it really is different when you with someone who is has custody of their children versus someone who is a very dedicated dad or very dedicated mom, but just don't have the custody because they have the free time. And that's some of the things I look for too when in terms of a future spouse, someone who is not only committed to being a father, but how much time do you actually spend with your children, or did you spend? If your kids are grown, because like mine are now, in their early 20s, so they're young adults now. Will probably be moving out, at some point. So at this stage, most of us have our kids who are transitioning from college into young adulthood. But how involved are you now, and how involved were you in your kids' lives and your parents as well? Those are very important relationships to consider in terms of a partner, because it impacts how they're going to treat you, because they know how to treat others that they are close to. You can have friends all day and they can be like family, but unless you have some abuse that you've experienced from your parents, that's your blood, and your relatives, extended or first generational, that's your blood. And so knowing how to treat those individuals is going to have an impact on how you treat a person of interest, your person. And so I consider those when I'm considering a person for dating and relationships. It really does. As they say, your dad kind of teaches you how to be that princess, or the mom may teach the son, how to be that gentleman. You learn a lot. I learned a lot from my extended family. Sometimes you learn what not to do, what to look out for, and sometimes you learn what to do. So knowing how to extract the proper things from your mentors and your examples that you encounter throughout your life is very, very important. I think the last person who responded to the male versus man series question was Trevor Jackson, and he says, it comes to realize who you want to be and what makes you happy. And I had to stop being hard on myself. Being hard on yourself versus loving yourself. Probably two different topics, but I get the point. I do. I get the point. Kevin Hart responded, pride has no value. And Boris Kojo said, we are defined by the people that care about us and that we care about. That's an interesting response. Still dealing with the topic of male versus man. And so as we close out this season 2, episode 3 of Why Did or Did Not Get Married, the final question is it really just commitment issues that prevent someone from getting married, whether same-sex or heterosexual? When we hear of the brief union scenarios, couples who may have dated for way too long, in my view, they dated, way longer than they were able to stay married. It brings up questions, and we see it and hear it. Those who lived together or didn't, and then they were dated or engaged, and then for whatever reason they finally get married, and they're only married for 1 year, and you're like, you were together for 10 years and you couldn't actually stay married for one? Was it the commitment? Was it fear of the commitment that had an impact? It raises questions. We often wonder and sometimes speculate as to what happened, wondering, does it point to a fear of commitment? The same fear that keeps some people single, because commitment or even staying in a relationship too long may limit their opportunity to get out. It's like if we're together and I know you're my person, you know I'm your person, everyone knows that we are each other's person. But in the back of my mind, I still know that if this don't work out, I can jump ship. I can just pack my stuff, or they can just pack their stuff, and we can just go our separate ways. And all love. I wish you the best. Peace, love, and happiness. But when you're, have that piece of paper, especially if there's children involved, and hopefully, you would have went ahead and made that union if children are involved. But even so, it's not as easy to walk away after you sign those papers. And you have the prenup. Hopefully, that's what gave you your peace. But it's still not as easy, and sometimes that is what puts men the brake. They put brakes on because the fear of, if this does not work out, it's going to cost me. Well, I would say, how much do you love your person? How much do you love them? If you're going to allow what it may cost you to prevent you from getting married, I still feel you don't love them enough. There are some men who feel like I'm okay with paying the person if things don't work out because I love her enough. I loved her enough to marry her. I feel that she contributed enough to our marriage to deserve at least something of whatever I'm going to give her because I love her and I want her to be comfortable. That person probably was a fairly decent spouse, but for the ones who are so afraid to actually make the commitment because of fear of what might happen if things don't work out, I still feel they kind of really don't love that person enough to do it. Because even if things don't work out, I still want you to be straight. I still want you to be good. I still want you to be comfortable. You may not have to get $1 million every month check from me, but I still care. The love may not be as high or as deep as it was when we started out, but I still care about you enough to want you to not have to struggle if things don't work out. Because I loved you enough to propose, I loved you enough to marry you, I love you enough to propose or to say yes if the woman is the one that has the money and the guy doesn't. And sometimes things end kind of ugly, but if I loved you enough to marry you, I should love you enough to care enough, unless that person did something really bogus, but I should love you enough to care enough to want you to be content. And it kind of sometimes reveals a person's heart. Like, are you that vindictive that that you would just really just want the person to suffer because things didn't work out? And it's never always all one person as to why things don't work out. It's definitely on both sides. And so that's something to consider if you refuse to get married because you're afraid of what may or may not happen. I have money now, and it's usually the one who is just coming into the money that's afraid of what might happen because they had to work so hard or do so much to get it. They refuse for anyone to come in and take it away from them. And so they rather stay single and just be a bachelor or old maid their whole life just to keep somebody else from coming in and taking what they work for. But most times that person helped them get it. And that's the reason why I say when you're dating a guy that has money and he's okay with spending it on a person versus the one that say you're a gold digger or the person who they consider them to be a bill. They want them to pay half on everything. There's two different type of people. It's two different types of people. Is that a male versus man thing, or is it just a preference thing? And on that, thank you so much. And on that, I'm going to end this topic. Someone here wants to buy one of my hats. God bless.